Sound speeds, and welcome to the Sound Speeds podcast. Now, I'm not going to be spending a whole lot of time on this intro, so let's get right into our content. A real life scenario that we sometimes run into when we do location work in the world of production sound is generators. I'm not talking about the tow plant generators that are on the back of a semi that are run 300 or 400 feet away from set. No, the ones I'm talking about are the more putt-putt style generators, like those that you would find at a Home Depot or Lowe's, and then they stick them right there on set, sometimes between the director's monitors and the set. That close. And it's there to power the director's monitors and maybe a couple of little lights on set. But those things can be highly annoying because they are so loud. And there is a little something that we can do about it. Now, breaking acoustics down. We normally on set refer to sounds in two categories: the controllable sounds and the non-controllable sounds. The controllable sounds are anything that we can basically shut off or at least reduce in some way. Like, for example, these Putt-Putt generators or any, cars that we have that are on the edge of set. We can tell them to turn off the engine. We can tell people to turn off fans on lights, things like that. Things that are non-controllable sounds are more like airplanes. We can maybe reduce that by waiting for the airplane to pass, but we can't do anything about the airplanes. I mean, we can't exactly call up the nearest airport and say, can you stop flying your airplanes because we are trying to shoot a movie here? That doesn't work. So what you end up having to do is control the sounds that you can. And generators on set, believe it or not, can be controlled to a certain degree. Now, there's a couple of basic principles when it comes down to soundproofing and sound absorbing. And I talk about them in that video right there, which I think I called One Thing That You Need to Know About Acoustics or something like that. Anyway, there's two basic categories that sound falls into. There is soundproofing, which people usually confuse with what you would do inside of your studio. But soundproofing could be best visualized if you were to dig a pit 50 feet into the ground, build a room that is, let's say, a 10 by 10 room, but it has 10-foot thick walls, and then you cover it over with concrete, you cover it over with dirt and everything like that. So that way it is this room that's in the middle of the earth, basically, with 50 feet of dirt around it and 10-foot concrete walls. If you were standing in the middle of that room, first of all, how did you get in there? But second of all, if you were in that room, you would not be able to hear anything from the outside world because the dense, thick concrete walls are preventing you from hearing anything through it. And that is what you want if you are soundproofing. You want to prevent sounds from getting through something. When you try to soundproof something, that's what you try to do, is prevent sounds from getting into someplace, right? But when you talk about your home studio, people usually say, oh yeah, my soundproofing. That's not soundproofing, that's sound absorbing material. And this needs to be very soft, perhaps with layers of air, kind of like what you would do with the windscreen, on your microphone. Pockets of air is going to be what stops the wind from getting through there. In just the same kind of way, those pockets of material with little bits of air in there are going to stop the sound from reflecting back and through, because it's not just the sound that goes into the wall, it also bounces off the back of the wall and comes back in. So for example, if you use something like Owens Corning 703 and you use, let's say, 4 inches, if you put it on a wall, directly on a wall, the sound is going to try to go through there, and then it's going to have to come back if it bounces back at all. So that means it's basically going to be going through 8 inches of thickness, and that's going to absorb almost all of your any bass frequencies all the way up to the very, very high sounds. Now, if you're only using 2 inches, it's only going to be going through 4 total inches as it goes through one side and then bounces off the wall and comes back. However, one thing you can do is if you don't put it directly against a wall, you back it off from the wall a few inches. That way, the sound has to go through there, hits a little pocket of air, bounces off the wall, and then comes back. That does actually help a little bit. But what I'm referring to in this video is something more like a Putt-Putt generator. What can you do about those? Well, something that is highly effective is asking the electrics if they can run it as far away from set as possible. Usually put it on the end of a stinger or two. So that way it's about, 50 to 100 feet away from set. Then you want to try to put something between it. Now, what are you going to put between it? Something that is obviously hard, something that is dense, usually something that has metal or concrete, something that has a dense material in there. What I usually try to do is get somebody to park a vehicle in front of it. So I usually talk to the Teamsters and see if they can maybe park one of our vans there. And then I talk to one of the grips and see if we can put a piece of layout board for a dance floor right there between the truck or the van or whatever it happens to be and the generator. What this is going to do is any of the vibrations that start to travel towards the set are going to first hit this piece of wood, then it's going to try to go through the truck. Now, or the van. Now, the reason I usually suggest putting the piece of wood in there, even though you may say, well, don't you just put a van there? Well, the reason I don't is because most of the time these putt-putts are on the ground and there is a gap underneath a vehicle that allows sound to travel through it. So by putting a piece of wood there, what it's going to do is it's going to block that a little bit. And then what I will also do is angle it backwards ever so slightly to try to angle some of that sound upwards. Now, by doing this, what you're doing is preventing some of those acoustic vibrations from going through there, and it's going to be absorbed a little bit by the piece of wood and then by the truck. So as it travels through the air, there's something that basically the sound is going to drop a certain number of decibels as you double your every single distance. And that distance is 6. It's going to drop by 6 decibels every time you double your distance. I have a video on adding decibels that teaches you a lot of things right there if you'd like to check it out. Now, what you can do is get some distance between it and then put some hard surfaces and hard materials between that putt-putt and your set. Doing that is going to be a great thing because, believe it or not, even if you're in the middle of an open field and there's the vibrations coming from that putt-putt generator and all the sound that's going to be coming from it is going to hit that truck or the van or whatever it is and reflect away from set. Now, you may say, how is that going to help if there is if you're like in the middle of a big area and there's buildings or something like that? Then you're going to have more of an issue because then it's going to be bouncing off of it's going to be reflecting off the buildings and bouncing back towards you. In that case, then you might want to try to build something around, like making a triangular shape thing around your putt-putt and then throwing some ferny pads over that to try to dissipate that sound if you can. Because what you're trying to do is basically create a situation where the sound is not able to move to set because it's being blocked, its path is being blocked. And if there is reflections, like if I put something right here and there's a building back over there, then the vibrations are going to be hitting that building and then coming back. This is the reason why indoors, this kind of technique doesn't always work because there's going to be something that it could reflect off of. If you're in the middle of an open field, all you need to do is basically block the direct path to your set. Direct the sound away from that, it's not going to be as much of an issue because the sound is going to be bouncing away and not hitting anything and reflecting back. So keep that in mind next time you're on set. If you're in a big open area, try to get some distance away from the putt-putt from your set and then try to build up layers of very dense, hard materials in between it. That's going to be a very effective thing for you. Since we're talking about acoustics, I'm going to discuss another thing for you to consider with regards to the way the world sounds around you. I would say close your eyes. If you were going to be in one of my acoustics classes, like the class I just taught last week, I would say that if you were to sit in a quiet room and you just close your eyes, listen to everything in that room. I want you to not just hear things like the air conditioner or heater and the cars moving around outside, maybe someone in the next room over, a cat, a dog, any of those kinds of sounds. If there's wind through trees and you hear the leaves blowing, that kind of thing. But one of the other things that people always underestimate is the acoustics of the room. Believe it or not, you can hear it. I did in another video talk about air and hearing air frequencies. Believe it or not, though, you can actually hear the room that you're in. Every single room has a room tone. This is what we usually record. Or at least we used to very commonly record the tone of the room. That way post would have it to slip between lines to build in spaces between lines of dialogue if they needed to build something out. We still use room tone, but usually post is able to grab it in little bitty gaps of silence in the middle of a scene. Now, the reason I am saying to listen to the room and not just the sounds that are in the room, listen to the actual tone of the room, because you can actually hear quite a bit. If you are in a room where there is no carpet, for example, things are going to sound more dead along the plane of the ground. Now, you may say, with 2 ears here, how can I hear underneath and above me? Well, believe it or not, you can. Your ears are right here and right here. So let's just handle this easiest right now. If there is a sound coming from over that direction, what will happen? Sound starts to travel through the air. It's going to hit this ear. And then the timing wise from it getting into this ear and going into this ear is going to indicate to your brain. It's going to perform a calculation, say that the distance between there and there is what, 8 feet or 8 inches, 8 feet, 8 inches or something like that. If it's 8 inches, it's also going to sound different because this ear is going to be completely open to whatever the sound is over there. And this ear is going to be hearing it from the other side of your head. So that attenuation that happens and the loss of frequencies, in addition to that distance and the timing, your brain is going to perform the calculation, say that sound is coming from that direction. Believe it or not. Now, if the sound is coming from, let's say, that direction, what will happen is this ear will hear it directly, line of sight. This ear might barely catch it around the side of my face, but if it is slightly through my face, it's going to be able to determine that as well. Believe it or not, the shape of your ear has a big to do with the way you hear. It's the fact that it is bigger on top and smaller on the bottom kind of reflects sound into and channels it into your ear. Now, you may say, sounds kind of far-fetched. Well, I would like you to do a little experiment with somebody. Have you or someone else close your eyes? And then what you do is have someone put their hand directly in front of you and the other hand directly behind you. But if your ears are in alignment here, have it be even spaced. So like 1 foot in front of the ear, 1 foot behind the ear. And then have someone simply do this. And what you're going to be able to hear is the sound. You'll say, that's from the front, that's from the back, that's from the front, that's from the back. You'll be able to hear it every single time. The reason why is because if a sound is in front of your ear, this little hole that goes into into the actual inner ear canal itself is able to hear all the frequencies coming in from the front, basically along this entire area. And then anything that comes from behind here is going to be attenuated ever so slightly. And your brain is going to do the calculations and say that sound, based on the frequency loss and the timing and everything, is behind you. So it's able to determine that sound is behind you. Now, it can also be the same kind of thing if you do one hand that's higher and one hand that's lower. Same thing, same even distance away from your ear. Have someone do this and then have someone do that. And believe it or not, your ears are going to be able to determine the height that it is. Your brain is extremely powerful. The shape of your ear is very powerful. And even if something is low, the way that sound comes into your ear and bounces off of the pinna of your ear and then it collects the sound into the inner ear canal is going to sound different than it is if the sound is higher. It directs into your ear, and believe it or not, your ear is quite powerful and able to do those calculations. Now, when you're inside of a room, you can hear the room you're in. And I want you to do this as an experiment. Go into a room, close your eyes. You know that room that you're in. If it has hard walls, which I'm sure it does, if it has carpet, or if it has more of a wooden floor. Close your eyes, you'll be able to hear that. If you are in a room where there is carpet, if you're in a room that has acoustic treatment, what you're not going to be able to hear is the sounds of just the general reflections of the room that you're in coming back at you, because the very, very low volumes of the sound that you're in, of the room that you're in, is going to dissipate over time. And by the time it comes back into your ears, there's going to be a timing thing there. There's also air frequencies that you're going to be missing if you're not in a big open room. So for example, if you closed your eyes and you were in a closet, even though the closet has hard walls and carpet, you're going to sound like you're in a quiet, small room. And if you're in a big room that has carpet and the same kind of walls, you're going to be able to hear that room as a room that is bigger, because you are able to hear the air around you. You're able to hear spatially the way that the most subtle of frequencies in the air are bouncing around things and going into your ear. Your brain is going to be able to do that calculation. And once you train your ears to do that, if you do the same thing with 2 stereo microphones or an MS pattern, AB space pair or stereo XY, whatever the kind of pattern is, and you do the sound just right, you can actually put the headphones on someone, have them listen, and that person should be able to tell if their ears are tuned and they've been trained to do this. They're able to hear the room that they're in, and they're going to say, oh, you're in a big room, or they're in a small room. If someone has just had very good hearing, they're going to be able to do the same thing. But believe it or not, your ears are extremely powerful, and you're able to hear the room that you're in. So when you are doing any kind of recording for yourself, if you are recording your podcast, if you're recording any kind of wild lines or something like that, the reason you want to record in the same room that you shot the sequence in is because you want to match that ambience. Now, sure, iZotope can switch ambience around and make this room sound like this room, but that's still digital, and there's still going to be some artifacts and impurities and imperfections in that, or at least as of 2024. But what you can do is, if you have to record wild lines or something like that, try to record in the same room that you were recording in before, especially if you're doing your own home projects. That is going to give you the very best possibility of matching to the audio that you used, that you recorded when you were recording the official real audio. So a scene, you were shooting a scene in there, try to record the wild lines in the exact same room, because if you don't, it's not going to match. And post may be able to do some digital magic. It's not going to be the same. So hopefully this gave you a little bit of insight into sound, not just reflecting sound away from set, but also how to hear the room that you're in. And I strongly suggest you practice, train your ears, sit in a quiet room and just listen. Try to identify the direction of things, change things up, turn your head left, right, go up, down, tilt your head. You're going to be able to hear the way that sounds still come from the same direction. Even if you tilt your head, if you're laying sideways, as long as you don't close off one ear, you're going to be able to hear sounds. Even though you're turning your head, it's still going to sound like it's more level and coming from that direction. Your brain is quite powerful and able to do all those calculations. And I strongly suggest you play with your ears and train them, because doing so is going to make you a very powerful sound person. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Sound Speeds podcast. And I'll see you in the next episode, which should be in about 2 weeks. And at that time, I'll be bringing you more sound things to think about and process. And as always, bring you more sound advice. Have a question you'd like answered or want to add something? Be sure to write it in the comment section down below. You can also make a suggestion for future topics of discussion. Again, comment section down below, or you can email me at soundspeeds@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on future sound advice.